Here I am. I am Rumeysa Çoban. In today's episode, we are going to be basically talking about teaching English in the era of AI. So we are joined by Scott Thornbury here, and he is going to be introducing himself to us. And I will be asking three questions to him. So the floor is yours, Scott. If you are ready, you can introduce yourself to us. Yeah.
Thank you, Mason. Thank you for making this opportunity available. I'm My name is Scott Thornbury. I'm based in Spain, where I've been working as a teacher trainer, and writer of books on methodology and on language, as an editor for Cambridge University Press. I guess I'm well known mostly for having launched the idea of Dogme ELT, which was uh, basically it was a reaction away from an approach to teaching which was dependent on materials, on technology, at the expense of the authentic interaction between the students and the teacher and the students and each other. So, in a sense, what it was trying to do, Dogma, using an analogy or a metaphor taken from Scandinavian film, which happened to interest me at the time. We're talking now 25 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Dogma was a reaction away from, as I say, from high tech teaching and an attempt to rehabilitate some of the basic principles of the communicative approach, which had preceded it by another 25 years. But not just the communicative approach, but also the sort of humanistic educational philosophy that, for me personally, was part of my formation as a teacher, even before I was a teacher trainer. So that's what we were trying to do with Dogma. And for better or worse, it's still out there. People are signing up for it, if you like. I would hesitate to call it a method. It's more like a sort of another way of being a teacher, if you like. So anyway, that's what I'm sort of fairly well known for.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll hand it back to you, Romesa, and you can ask your first question.
Yes, thank you so much. Your dogma approach, maybe we can name like that, was like a crucial thing for me while I was like at my university years. I was reading like a lot of book of yours, so thank you for like joining me again. So let's continue with our first question if you're ready. So as you said, if dogma is about like stripping away the clutter to focus on the learner, I'm going to use the word clutter. So, how should we, as new teachers, perceive AI? Like, is it another like piece of clutter, or can it be a kind of a tool for us to achieve new kind of human-centric pedagogy, I would say.
I mean, yeah, that's such a good question. And I must say at this point that I'm not an expert on artificial intelligence. I was sort of there when ChatGPT launched on the world in November 2022, I think, and a colleague of mine who works in Germany got in touch, and he's a sort of dogma fan, and so he was asking me a similar question: How could AI be incorporated into a sort of more dogmatic, if you like, approach? And I don't have the answer to that. I mean, I think any technology, there's a danger of creating unnecessary clutter, and that's what Dogma originally was fighting against. Was way before even mobile phones, let alone the internet, YouTube, and all the different resources that we have now. I think there's, as I say, there's a danger, and one always, with any technology, needs to sort of challenge it and say, what does it add? Uh, what does it add appreciably to what we already do quite well? People have been teaching languages without AI for 2,000, 3,000, 10,000 years. Does it really add anything, or does it create, as you say, clutter, more problems than it? Uh, I I'm more interested in the part of the question really that is, what can it do to reinforce human-centric Pedagogy, which is again references Dogme. I was, I mean, even before AI burst on the scene 2 or 3 years ago, it was around. It's been around for a long time in one form or another. And I was interested when I saw this book advertised, The Most Human, um, because I mean, that resonates with me, this idea of humanism in language teaching. Now, it's not a book about teaching, it's not a book about language, it's actually a book about artificial intelligence. And the subtitle is What Artificial Intelligence Teaches Us About Being Alive. And so this is a guy whose experience with artificial intelligence was as a kind of participant in competitions that were regularly run, and maybe they still are, I don't know, to test computer programs that aim to simulate human interaction. And the idea was that if you could design a program that simulated human interaction to the point that anybody, a human interacting with it, wouldn't know that it was a computer, then you would get a prize. So they would have this competition every year, and they would have the programs, and then they would have humans, real humans, who would interact with people. And the idea was that the the testees had to identify which was a computer and which was a human. And this guy who wrote the book, Brian Christian, and came out in 2011, was always voted, asked to come back each year because he was the human that everybody knew was a human. They just know he's definitely a human. So he wrote a book about what is it that makes a human and not a computer, not a machine. What's the difference fundamentally between artificial intelligence and a human? And this is what interested me because one of the things about Dogma was to try and uh, recenter teaching in the human, even before artificial intelligence. So what is it that makes a human human? What makes a human teacher as opposed to an artificial intelligence teacher? And one of the things he said, and I think captures the difference between human cognition and artificial intelligence, is that artificial intelligence is the product of massive training on huge databases. We know that these huge databases that have been collected, and the program is trained so that it can predict what the next word is, what the next sentence is in a text, etc. And it does that in a way which is uncanny. I mean, anybody who's played around with it will know that it's extraordinary what it seems to be able to predict. And it seems like it's thinking, reacting, responding, interacting as a human being. But Brian Christian in this book says just because something is sophisticated, when he says seeing sophisticated behavior doesn't necessarily indicate a mind,
Mhm.
it might just indicate a memory. And that's exactly, and I thought that's amazing. In 2011, he nailed it, the difference between human cognition, which is
Mhm.
mind centered, and artificial intelligence cognition,
Mhm.
which is memory based. It's based on this memory of this huge
Mhm.
database. Now, maybe there's no difference in the end result for a day to day, bro. You want a recipe for, I've got 5 eggs in the fridge and a
Yeah.
tomato and some carrot. Give me a recipe, and it will give you a recipe, and the recipe will be, for all intents and purposes, adequate. If you ask the program
Mhm.
about, why I prefer that recipe to another, or had it, was this, what kind of associations with the recipe had for it, we'd probably find it wouldn't be very
Yeah.
articulate because they don't have minds. They don't have an internalized model of the world which they can refer to. And very important, they can't imagine the mind of the person they're interacting with. And this was the thing with when they did these competitions, they were very easy to fool these computers. If you tried to uh, if you tried to enter into their minds, you'll find that there was essentially nothing there. And he said again in this book, he says when we're interacting, when we get to uh, when we're interacting with people, we kind of co-adapt. We adapt to them, they adapt to us. You can see this physically. And people start using the same gestures, their accents may
Hmm.
urge, etc. All sorts of things that we do to create empathy.
Yes.
And that means getting inside the mind of the person we're talking to. And Brian Christian says in this book, he says, we can't get to know a person without, in some degree, changing them and without, to some degree, becoming them, becoming the person we're. And I think this is the crux of it. This is teaching, good teaching is all about, is the
Yeah.
ability to become your learner, to be able to get inside your learner. It's what's sometimes called technically intersubjectivity. Intersubjectivity is the capacity we have as humans to know what the other person is thinking and feeling.
Yes.
We can get inside their heads. And if we couldn't do that, it would be tantamount to being autistic. But that ability to do that is also fundamental to teaching, and particularly language teaching. Because as a language teacher, you have to get inside your learner's head. You have to know what it is they're trying to say, even if they don't have the linguistic means to say it.
Hmm.
Yeah. A lot of the time as language teachers, we're, what? Hey, what are you trying to say? Ah, okay. Okay, this
Yes.
is how you could say it. Yeah.
Hmm.
And that is such an important skill. And I'll come back to that a little bit later on because it's relevant to, I think, another one of the questions. So that's the difference between AI and human teachers. Yeah, AI can do a lot of the routine things. It's extremely useful. It's
Hmm.
extremely useful for learners outside the classroom, so they can practice dialogues and things with AI. And it's okay. It was especially for kind of practical things. Um, and also, of course, AI is fantastic for teachers in terms of generating texts. You want a
Yeah.
text at B2 level, which includes 5 examples of the present continuous, and it's about a famous sportsman. Tell it, and it will do it. And you may have to ask it again a couple of times. It's a bit difficult. Can you take out some of the longer words, etc.? But it's amazing. It can generate lesson plans, and I've tried this myself. And I've said to it, generate a Dogme lesson plan for a B1 class on the
Hmm.
subject of sports, and it it's serviceable. It will do it. So I mean, I think, and it's only going to get better. So we can't dismiss it. But I think when it comes back to the fundamental of good teaching, the
Hmm.
ability to interact with learners as a human, I'm not convinced that AI will really be able to do that in a way that is convincing.
Yes, that is correct. Yeah, you're right. It's going to be an extraordinary example, but when you made a distinction between mind and like memory, I may give this example. So we are basically using AI for generating some text as usual, as you said. And for example, in order to check the AI's capacity, we have tried something with my colleagues, which is about we asked, for example, some AI tools that would you mind like creating a wine glass that is full with wine? But the thing is that when we try to like search for those in the internet for the images, they're always like half, it's not full all the time. So it was not able to fulfill that task, and he failed. It failed basically. So I can understand from your perspective, so that is correct. It is like full of data. So it
Mm.
basically tries to get the data and gives you information from there instead of like making genuine connection with students. Yeah, I agree on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's only as good as the data that it's trained on. And we know this from experience with other kinds of databases that we've used in
Hmm.
teaching, like Corpora, for example, a corpus, which is a database of texts
Yeah.
which we can search. And people who write dictionaries and grammars actually use Corpora now,
Hmm.
authentic language. You say, find me 20 examples of used to, for example, and we'll have a look at those and how they're used and what the negative is, etc. But I mean, it, if the corpus it's based on is derived from, say, solely American English or solely British English,
Hmm.
you can't say it's completely representative. Or if it's only written English as opposed to spoken English, it's not
Yeah.
representative. And the same thing with the learning. databases, although they're much bigger for AI, they're still limited.
Yeah, that is so correct. So, if you're okay, I'm gonna continue with my second question, if it's okay for you. So, as we are talking about like AI and like learning paths, like nearly all of the students are using AI. They're like a personal, like they're individualized uh,
Mhm.
teachers, you know? So, but in today's world, basically in the last like 20 years or something, we're using methods a lot. So, my question is going to be about, so does the like concept of a shared classroom method still hold any value for a teacher in their first year, or is it officially over for us? What would you say on this?
Well, I mean, how long have you got? I mean, methods is one of the topics that I'm particularly interested in. And in fact, I wrote a book a couple of years ago called 30 Language Teaching Methods. And
Mm-hmm.
and I was able, no, this was pre ChatGPT. So I didn't actually talk about AI in that book. But um, I don't think AI necessarily signals the death of method because the methods are already dead. I mean, despite books like this,
Yes.
the method concept was has been the people have been talking about it since the end of the last century because methods are so prescriptive and rigid that they don't adapt to the wide range of contexts uh, out there. And so, what each teacher develops an approach which is appropriate, one hopes, for their particular context and their particular class. And that's why I think good teaching has always been, to use your expression, hyper individualized. And AI is not necessarily going to make it more individualized, although, of course, adaptive learning programs, which
Mm-hmm.
can adapt to individuals, and
Yes.
particularly with regard to testing, are more possible now with AI. But I mean, I think good teachers have always been, if you like, hyper individualized. And I like to quote Kumarama Divalu in his book
Mm-hmm.
2003, a book appropriately called Beyond Methods.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and he says a good methodology has to respect what he calls the parameter of particularity. I mean, this is one of the three parameters he mentions, and he defines that as being any language pedagogy to be relevant, any language pedagogy, I mean any language method,
Yeah.
if you like, must be sensitive to a particular group of teachers teaching a particular group of learners pursuing a particular set of goals within a particular institutional context embedded in a particular socio-cultural milieu. So
Mm-hmm.
you get this kind of degrees of particularity nested within each other. And again, one could argue that artificial intelligence is not necessarily sensitive to the different nested contexts, if you like. You can say, design me a lesson plan for B1 level for such and such, but B1 level where? Speaking what first language? With what experience of speaking English? With what access to English outside the classroom? With what motivation? How can AI know what the teacher instinctively knows is how motivated the teachers are, the learners are, for example?
Mm-hmm.
And probably amongst all those factors that they're going to impact on this hyper individualized approach teacher selects is the kind of interaction, coming back to the question of interaction. Um, the materials, etc., the lesson, the design of the lesson are less probably influential in terms of the learning opportunities
Mm-hmm.
than the kind of interactions that the teacher sets up in the classroom and that happen between the learners themselves. I love quoting Earl Stevick, who's the kind of grandfather of humanistic approaches to language teaching, way back in 1980. And he said, and is endlessly quoted as
Mm-hmm.
saying, success, success in language teaching depends less on materials, less on techniques, less on linguistic analyses, and you could add less on methods as well, and more on what goes on inside and between the people in the classroom,
Mm-hmm.
inside and between. And that really, again, was one of the sort of founding concepts behind the dogma movement, this notion that it's
Mm-hmm.
not about materials, it's not about techniques, it's not about methods, it's about what happens in that space,
Mm-hmm.
between the people in the room.
Yeah, yeah, I agree on that because even in like Turkey's situation, the background information or the personal like personalized situations that a students have like really changes. It changes a lot from northeast to the southeast place of the Turkey. So it can change a lot. So like I agree on that. It is not possible for us to handle everything at the like same level. So yeah, you're right on that. I agree.
And the test of that, incidentally, was the pandemic a few years ago when we were suddenly reduced to having to teach online and we
Yeah, yeah.
lost the
Yes.
physicality of the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
And we were good as teachers, as a profession, because we adapted very quickly to using Zoom, for example.
Yes.
But I think a lot of us missed a lot. We missed that physicality, the ability, to cast your eye around and see exactly what was going on, to not lose students' attention to the
Hmm.
degree that you lose it online, etc. So I think a lot of teachers were very happy to go back into the real classroom.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Even if, sorry to interrupt, sorry. Even if
uh,
we like dealt with COVID-19 situations and like the online teaching stuff, we looked that one as a temporary situation. Like we didn't I basically didn't look at it as like permanent, like something permanent because like as you said, we need to touch on the students. We need to like get into an interaction. So it is not that possible for us to from a some distance. So yeah, we missed. Yes, you're right. Let's go with my last question. As a post AI teacher, me, who has graduated like last year and trying to do my best, um, what is one skill at 2025 or 2026, we're at the beginning, ELT professional must cultivate to remain relevant and effective as a human mentor in an automated world? What would you say this one?
well, I mean, I've said it really, and I think just to summarize it, it's retrieving and promoting and foregrounding that kind of human-human interaction,
Hmm.
being the human teacher as opposed to the artificial intelligence
Hmm.
teacher. Because artificial intelligence, as I said, can only get better, and it's taking over lots of jobs around the world, all sorts of
Yeah.
jobs that it can do more efficiently and ultimately more cheaply. Will it take over jobs like teaching? And I think that's the big question. And I think it will if we let it. If we relax into just becoming technicians ourselves, just bringing in materials and working through the course book and telling students, look at page 56, open, do exercise 2, here's the answers, blah, blah, blah. Then, of course, AI can do that just as well. Uh, but if we turn the classroom or maintain the classroom as a kind of
Hmm.
social environment where language is the medium of socializing,
Hmm.
then we always going to be ahead of AI because I think because we will be the more human, we'll be the more humanistic kind of classroom or social situation. It's retrieving, maintaining that social connection between, and that means that as a teacher you need to interact as a human being, and not always as a teacher. But you are a teacher, so there's a skill involved in, for example, having conversations with the learners,
Yes.
but then stopping them strategically and saying, "Yeah, that's good, but this would be better."
Yes.
Yeah, I'm going to write it on the board. I'm going to practice it. Okay, let's go back to the conversation we are having, which is really interesting. And then again, stop. Okay, little problem here. I don't think the pronunciation was good. Couldn't understand you. Let's just practice that. Okay, back to the conversation. So it's wearing those two hats as a teacher, being the human being,
Hmm.
but being the the teacher, the instructor. And again, this is something that AI can't necessarily do. AI is good at recognizing superficial errors in writing, for example, and more will recognize them in speech. But it comes back to saying it can't actually get inside the head of the learner and say, what is it you're trying to say? And nor can the AI adapt their way of interacting to the learner's level of understanding. And
Mm-hmm.
teachers are very good at this, of saying, "Oh, students are having trouble understanding. I need to speak more slowly. I need to change the vocabulary a bit. I need to repeat myself or do whatever." Teachers are extremely good at that, very sensitive, and not just to one student, but to all the students in the class and how they're all different. And good teachers can moderate their
Mm-hmm.
delivery, not to speaking baby talk to the students, but on the contrary, speaking naturally and even a little bit more difficult than the students understand that magical what Krashen called I+1
Yes.
input plus one. It's input, but it's adjusted slightly, so it's challenging. That's where the learning opportunities come for the learners. Um, it's that ability to give feedback which is personalized, directive, appropriate, non-threatening.
Mm-hmm.
That feedback in the form of correction, but also positive feedback. Well, that was good. Let's hear that again. That was fantastic. Did you hear that? And so on. That's what we do very well. And those are the skills that we need to develop. Of course, we need to develop our knowledge of language, our knowledge of the grammar, etc. We need to develop our understanding of methods. And that's where, it's useful to know something about methods, because methods offer new teachers, particularly, a
Mm-hmm.
sort of template on which they can plan their lessons. So this is how people used to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And some people still do it like this. Try it, because it's a tried and tested approach, this particular method. It
Mm-hmm.
worked for somebody somewhere. So, but you'll need to then go beyond that method and adapt it and become eclectic, taking from different methods, so that your approach generally is more suited to your particular learners. That's something that you do over time. And, the again, it comes with this question: will AI be able to do this over time? Yeah, I mean, I'm not estimating what AI will be able to do, and that will be able to become, perhaps at a point, will become
Mm-hmm.
uh, indistinguishable from interaction, even teacher kind of interaction. That's the point. If we reach that point, we have probably reached the point where speech to speech simultaneous translation will be generally available to everybody on their
Mm-hmm.
phones or whatever. We won't need to learn second languages, and therefore teachers, our job will be redundant. Um, but I don't think we're there yet. And as I said, if we can foreground the human side of teaching, then we'll always, in the foreseeable future, we'll always be one step ahead of the technology.
Yes, you're right on that. As a post-AI teacher, I basically try my best to get to know everything in this like circumstances, because also students are interacted with technology a lot. So I'm trying to like keep up with them, because otherwise I'm gonna also be in the shelf life, let's say. So yeah. Scott Thornbury, I'm so glad at having you here. And for my colleagues watching, just try to be yourself and try to get the most interact with your students as you can. And see you in the next episode. Take care of yourself, everyone. Bye, Scott.
Thank you, Ramesh, and thank you, everybody. It's been
Thank you.
really enjoyable talking with you.
Yeah.